In BuildPiper, we believe in delivering accessible solution and making sure that that accessibility has an impact in a lot of developers, the DevOps team. So we build BuildPiper. So now when we start our portal, so what we see is this. We see an entire screen which is ready for sign up. And what you have to do is you just have to log in. This is a new account we just did. And if it is up and ready, it says it's already there. So now you can just go ahead, click on a new link, and now change your name. So now this is the process where you start onboarding your application. So once you start building your application, this is the process. So you start with the application building process. So go to 6. So let's keep the default. It's now getting everything done. And it has every other services which is there required for you, which is integrable. So now once you get in, you see a portal which has one application that is your sample app 426, and there are one cluster which is provided by the BuildPiper, which has 2 environments, that is prod and a pre-prod, and of course there are 0 services and there are 0 pipeline. So now when you start onboarding an application, the process is very simple. You start delivering the solution based on the microservices here. So everything that is required for you is provided in this dashboard tab. You get to see the service overviews, pipeline overviews, environments, job templates, building and deploying. And of course, we have a lot of canary templates out there, and you can just use them. Now, the interesting feature about all these applications that we are just building is the step catalog. Step catalog helps you in giving you that one step and a one-click process to adapt or integrate into new services. So once we click on this application, you can see that there are a lot of other templates which are already available and you can use them. And this is available in your super admin access. But once you start getting to know what is the category, that is your build, deploy, K deployment, and some other services that you really want to work upon. So you can choose deploy, and there are many deploy templates which are already available as a step catalog. Creating an environment is much more easier and faster in terms of BuildPiper. It's very easy to deploy an application and an environment. So you have to navigate to your application tab, which is there here, and you have to click on environments overview. And now you have an entire environment that can be created. That's just simple setup. And just go here, define an environment type. You can say dev1, that will be there. And you can choose whether to give it a manual build or a manual deploy. And cluster is basically a SaaS cluster that you can onboard in an admin. So it's a SaaS cluster that you can start using here. So once we go back, and a namespace, you can choose prod or a non-prod. Now I'm just choosing a non-prod namespace here. And you need not have to worry about integrating with other services. This is a Nexus registry, which is going to be there, but this is your key vault or HashiCorp vault. This is your SonarQube token, which is used for testing and the security scanning. So seeing where the infrastructure is very simple, navigate to your dashboard, and there's an application tab which comes in here, but go ahead, click on the infrastructure, and you see that there is a namespace which is used, that is my non-prod, and my cloud provider, that is LTC Cloud. And this is a SaaS portal, that is a SaaS playground that is available for you in order to experience what is it using BuildPiper. Now, onboarding your own service is much more easier and faster with BuildPiper. So you just have to navigate To the services, you can just type in demo application. You can say an external name saying that, hey, let's put it as a sample app Spring. Build once and promote, and build for every environment. That's an option. You can just go ahead with it. And now you can see that there are environments that I just created that is getting listed here. And you have an option of manual build as well as manual deploy. You can choose any of it. And you can select a job template if you have created one, but no. So now I'm defining to which user there's an access into this entire environment build and the services that I'm getting onboarded. So now I want an access to a developer. So I gave an access to the dev team. I want an access to be given to the DevOps team. So there DevOps comes into the picture. Now it's just save and continue. So now you just configure an entire services that can be built and deployed. So let's just configure builds. So configure build is much more easier and faster in BuildPiper. So you have to just give the get details for the build to happen. You should know where the credentials are. It's easy. So let's just get it done. So GitHub and Spring Suite, Hibernate. This is where you can just go ahead, grab the boilerplate code, which is already available in BuildPiper. So you can copy the Git. This is a public repository. You need not have to worry about the credentials here. But if you have any repositories which are cloud managed, as well as your own credentials or your own repositories, you have to manage that. So you can add credentials. That means you can choose as password, SSH tokens, access tokens, AWS managed. If it's Azure, you just need to just manage with the SSH tokens or access tokens. That works here. So I don't have any. So I just go ahead, I load the branches. And here you can see that there are different branches which are already getting created. Now, I just want to build a dev branch. I build the dev branch and I give the build context saying that where is the entire build aspects here. So the contexts are always here in the same old repository. So I need not have to worry about anything that is happening. So I just give it, it says that this is the current repository and I say Docker file because that's the file which is helpful in configuring Docker static environment. Now I do that and I say, yes, you can go ahead with advanced configurations as well, but you can also add your own Graviton builds. This is one of the features that BuildPiper really embraces because ARM templates, building your entire image or the containers for an ARM images are very, very challenging. So BuildPiper solves that. You can choose any of it, or you can choose all, and the build process will happen seamlessly. So you must be wondering how is this entire build process and how is the automation of the scripts happening here and what's the magic? So your image name is being automatically generated out. So you need not have to worry about your image. You can add version, also you can just keep it like that. Because this is my first demo, I'll be just doing that as well. So you can build for every platforms, including ARM, RISC 64, 368, PTC 64LE. You can build on any of these. So I click on continue and I choose which stack is my application going ahead. So I have my container build. I should say which is a stack that is going through. And I say let's go with Java. And I say, do I need to have a sonar queue configured? It's just a sonar key that we'll be adding there, and everything will be taken with respect to the deployment. So now I choose Java. I go ahead, and this is where environment variables can be created. You can add any amount of environment variables. You can just go ahead with an editor view. You can just go with a field view as well. So that's up to you. So now there are hooks. That is build pre-hooks, build post-hooks. So if you are building on some application which has some set of rules to be followed and some commands that BuildPiper that might not be available, you just go ahead with the pre-hooks and the post-hooks for the build. So now we don't have any, we just go through it. And this is where you find every application that is getting built and configured. So this is where you are building it, and this is all the repository details. So now we learned how to configure a build. So let's just explore how to actually trigger a build and now start deploying. Now see how accessible ESA analytic module is all about. Because a lot of times DevOps tools don't have a clue where the infrastructure is being hit with an incident or not getting built or not getting deployed. So our solution makes it more accessible and much more easier for a DevOps team or a DevOps professional to see that where is the impact and where is the challenges in building and deploying this application as well. So now we have understood what is it all about, just getting till the build. Let's trigger the builds now. So I go to my portal, I see that there are number of applications which are already built. So now I've built a pipeline just for a demo. This is still the same old user portal cluster, which is still existing. That means you are not given a super admin access here, but you can still explore what BuildPiper is all about. So there are 3 services which I've built. That is here. This is your demo application, dev test, S3HA. You can click any of it and see what's happening inside the services. Now we have one application that is my S3HA. This is getting reflected here. So this is what is being seen here. So if your DevOps team has so many microservices and you don't want to have a hassle of the pipelines, this entire dashboard gives you that accessibility, and this entire dashboard gives you that visibility about your infrastructure. So now let's just start exploring what happens inside one services. So now that I've configured a build, I can trigger a build by clicking onto this icon. This is build icon, and you can click on it here. So now that we have configured build, it's very easy to explore what should be triggered. So you just have to go here, just say to yourself, I'm going to build an application. So I'm going to trigger a build. So navigate to this build. You can trigger the builds, you can tag this deployment, but now let's just go ahead with the default. I can trigger the builds, and you can see the magic of this entire process. It just starts with a click. You can do a lot of configuration. You can view the details, what's happening behind your application at every given point of time. So this is how it is. You are seeing an entire build process in a form of a GUI. If you want to know what is happening behind the logs, it's very easy. You can go ahead, start using this logs, and you can view what's happening behind this entire application stack. So this takes time. So we have to be patient. And of course, you don't have to worry about it because there is a history tab which I have, which helps me in getting my access towards that application. So I go here, I click on it, and you can see that there are many successful builds. There are many builds which are running. Of course, there are no unsuccessful builds here because I'm just doing a demo. Of course, it's part and parcel of the DevOps team, so we can't neglect that. So I view the logs. It's simple and easy. it's accessible. That means that you have an access to an entire logs which is just getting created. I click on the cloning repository, the repository is getting cloned. I click on pre-hooks. There are no pre-hook steps, that is build pre-hooks. So building of a Docker image just became much more easier and faster. So it's all the entire image that is getting built, and that is being artifact. So it's an artifact which stays in your entire system. So push to the Docker image to the doc. So we push the Docker image to the Docker repository, and there you have it. So there's a tag which says that, this is 3.2. Let me just go through that. So this will be the tag, and you can just go ahead, grab this one. So there are no build post hook steps that are being defined. So you can go ahead and just start executing if there is one. And I didn't have one, so I need not have to worry. And you can stop the builds which are happening. You need not have to wait for a developer or a DevOps engineer to come ahead and see or give a credentials. If you are authorized, you have an access to stop the entire build process. So now we have explored how to trigger a build. It's seamless even to deploy here. So let's just deploy the application, and we can go ahead with one of the latest builds that happened, and we can trigger the deploys here. Just see the fact that, we have used the images many times, but yet we are giving an accessible solution. That means that you don't have to wait for your system to be configured for your rollbacks. You can just change the version, and you're good to roll back at any given time. So you can view the details. Of course, this build was successful. That's awesome. So these are the deploy logs which are coming up. So generating the manifest, yes. Loading to the Kubernetes config files, yes. And the stateless apps have been configured here, and the deployment rollouts have been also validated. So now this was a successful build, and previously was deployed. So now you know for the fact that your rollback is much faster and quicker using BuildPiper. You can promote to another environment. It's few clicks, and you're good to even promote your application to an next environment. That means, let's say I want to move from the QA to the pre-prod. It's much more easier. It's just clicks. So now we know all these features which are already available in BuildPiper, and also we have an entire visibility of what has been deployed and how many applications have been promoted. I promoted none in this demo, so there are none. So you can go ahead and explore what is the status of your entire infrastructure in terms of microservices, not in terms of the pipelines. So now if you want to have a good amount of analytics, there is monitoring tab here. You can go ahead, explore it. So right now I click on it, and you can see an entire observability tag being in front of. That means what's the pod status, how many pods are ready, what is the challenges that you really will face during the deployment. Is all about how much is being the progress of the entire infrastructure stack that we are going through. So now, if I want to restart the pods, I can restart the pods. I want to view the YAMLs. I can still view the YAMLs here. So BuildPiper doesn't allow you to actually go through an entire hassle of building the YAML files for your Kubernetes, because you have the state-of-the-art accessibility, and you have a state-of-the-art solution that configures and manages your Kubernetes. And guess what? You need not have to have the hassle of what is going to be the version of my Kubernetes. We manage them. So that's how it is. So you have an entire YAML files which are getting built, and you have the status of it. And guess what? You get an access to what's the build numbers, what are the pod uptimes, and what are the types of conditions that a pod is going through. Is it initialized? Is it ready? Is it container ready? Is the pod scheduled? That's how it is. So you can also grab in the events. You can also know which container has been used here, and the amount of logs that can be generated is seamless. And logs are what makes our lives much easier and faster in DevOps. So we got to know what is it all about when it comes to the monitoring aspect. But let's just go and see what's happening inside a dev environment. So I wanted to see in a dev environment, what is CPU utilization? What is the memory utilization? And there are different CPU limits that I need to start working. There are different memory limits that I need to start optimizing towards. So it's all there for you. So associated services can also be viewed. That means you have hundreds of services, all the matrices related to those 100 services will be available for you. If you want to know what are the config maps, you can see what are the associated services, CA certs and Kubernetes certs. You can go ahead with any amount of insights about Kubernetes cluster. So of course, there are a lot of secrets that you can just go ahead and configure on your BuildPiper. So you can go ahead with it. So if you want to schedule a downtime, it's very easy. So let's say I want to put a cron job 2, and I want to just schedule a downtime for, let's say, Monday from 22 hours to a downtime, start time to 21, 23, or let's keep it nominal now, 40. You can really set a downtime here. And there are different pipelines that you can set. So we'll go through that process as well, and we can start working. So you can use an BP default pipeline as well, or you can just start working towards it. So now you can see who has an access control over this entire application. Enable this schedule, yes, and I go here and save this. And you just schedule a downtime for your entire infrastructure. That means you pay less for utilizing what Kubernetes has to offer. And you put lesser workload on the days that you expect no traffic into your infrastructure. So let's just go with the pipelines. Pipelines are different in terms of building process. So let me just go to the dev pipeline. It's very simple and seamless in BuildPiper. So you can go ahead, configure any amount of pipelines that are there here, and you can see different matrices that are being taken care of. So there are cloning repositories, pre-hooks, build Docker images, push to the Docker image, and push the Docker image to the Docker registry, and push post execution. You can just start viewing every matrices that are there. And of course, the deployment jobs are also successful. So they say, what is the actual artifact that has been pushed into that environment? Because this is dev that I've been configuring, and now it comes out as dev. And it says, which is the build that I'm just figuring right. So this is how BuildPiper gives you a seamless experience in managing your microservices and delivering a right solution for your DevOps culture, because a lot of times these things are configured and there are a lot of ways in which you can misconfigure them, but BuildPiper allows you to configure it the right way. So now that we saw that how to build a pipeline and what is the impact that a BuildPiper can do, let me just give you a quick demo of what is it all about when I'm trying to build some pipelines. So retention count, I can give it as 1, 10, you name it, you can do it. SCM pool, webhooks, schedule. You can make sure that if you want to trigger the entire pipeline manually, you can trigger it manually. If you want to schedule it, you can schedule it. If you want to trigger the pipelines through webhooks, you can still do that. Of course, we have an immense portfolio with respect to the Jira integration. Lenskart, one of our customers, uses Jira integration seamlessly because their entire build and the deployment process happens through Jira. And you can add a ticket. You can say what's the category of the tickets. You can still go through that. Or else, if you want to have a reference to trigger the pipeline, you can still go ahead and do that. If you really want to set up the multi-service pipelines, you can still go ahead and start working towards it. And of course, tags are always there. In terms of tags, we have an amazing portfolio in terms of BuildPiper. BuildPiper had a different seamless build with respect to the tagging, and now BuildPiper has really give a seamless solution to solve that problem. So now you can have a retention count of 12. And let's say I want to have an role which is being only given access to the dev people and the DevOps people in my organization. I just go ahead and configure it. And you can have a new stage. That means you can stage it as dev 1, 2, and you can just put the conditions, just put the values here, because these are solution approval not required. Yes. And you can add a new job, S3HA, and build. And you can go ahead and deploy to any environment that says, hey, you know what, it's QA. And I say it to all services which are there embedded inside this application. So I need that. If you want to add tags, you add the tags as well. So add them, and the build is now being configured, and the image is now. And you can still go ahead and configure the deployments. And you can still add the promote. So you can still go ahead and get to know what are the different sources that I need to start working. So let's say my artifactory source is from the rolling deployments or the canary artifacts. You can just go ahead and just put that condition on. You can terminate the pipeline on the failure. That's the only step that you have. And you can add this pipelines. Okay, I need to select an environment. So I think I can deploy to the QA. And yes, I can add it to all the services, and you just configured yourself an artifact that can be deployed on different services as well. So this is a seamless experience that BuildPiper offers, because a lot of times when you are building any of process in your pipelines, probably there are chances where you misconfigure, and BuildPiper doesn't allow you to do that. So now you saw how seamless it is to deliver something using pipelines as well. So let's just go ahead and explore something more on what you can do with your pipeline. So you have a set of pipelines that are just being scheduled, that are just being configured for your needs. So what you have to do is very simple. You can just run these pipelines, and the status will be running, and you can also run with the parameters. That means that you can select which application has to have. You can select the branches which you have to do. Just grab the code form for your microservices, because in BuildPiper, you don't talk in terms of pipelines, you talk in terms of microservices. So that's where your application building process comes into the picture. So you can run the pipelines, and you can say that, hey, you know what, it's still running, and there are dev build applies, and there are 2 jobs which are being initiated. That means that once you run a pipeline, the other pipelines just seizes up. And that means that you have a complete control of what needs to be configured here. So you can configure multiple microservices in one pipeline, or else you can just go ahead with configuring one microservice at a time. Also, if you want to have deployment at a scale, go ahead with it. That's where BuildPiper gives you a lot of accessibility in terms of the deployment and the process in which you start building the entire application. That's it for now. If you have any queries, do reach out to us at connect@buildpiper.io, and we will help you in delivering a great solution for your microservices.